Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Jake, and I have a confession to make. I love Bob Dylan, but I'm sure it's not very surprising, for someone of my general appearance. I am deeply regretting the fact that Nadia, beloved wife and co-host, is not with me here to do this review. She is still on maternity leave. I feel like I need someone to balance out my huge biases. A Complete Unknown is a musical biopic that we've been seeing a ton of lately. Directed by James Mangold, starring Timothée Chalamet. Couldn't picture Chalamet in the role, and then the trailer just was like, okay. And it's covering those early years that are super boring to me. My entrance to Bob Dylan wasn't through all the, Highway 61 and Blonde on Blonde. It was the later stuff, basically anything past Nashville Skyline was when I was able to discover new things, because what pushed me away from Bob Dylan was all of the adoration and all of the, these are the best songs ever written. This is already getting off the rails. I'm sorry, everyone. My favorite Dylan era, for the most part, would be like, mid 70s. I love Blood on the Tracks, Desire, Street Legal. And I really like the gospel years. I love Slow Train Coming. I could listen through all of Knocked Out Loaded just to hear the glorious Brownsville Girl. You guys know what I'm saying, right? This is all to say I'm invested in this story, and I know much less than I probably should about his early years and how he went electric and everything. And this is the mythology of Bob Dylan, and this movie's trying to tackle that. I think a lot of people who are fans of Bob Dylan were like, I don't know about this. Anyways, I saw the movie, have some reservations, but I want to say that I was overwhelmingly pleased. The most important thing about this movie is that it is wall-to-wall music. It prioritizes the performances. It prioritizes these incredible actors performing these songs. Something I noticed is that there's really no musical store, what do they call it, non-diegetic music. It's all just these Dylan songs. Chalamet is just amazing. He really pulls it off. He isn't exactly like Dylan, but he's pretty close, and he embodies that attitude. I don't know, I was really kind of amazed at how unexciting the movie is and how it just lets these songs play. Like if you don't love the music, I can't imagine you liking this movie, because that's what it is. Dylan is so famous for his unknowability. I mean, it's literally called A Complete Unknown. That's part of what is elusive and brilliant about his art, is that he seems to embody these different personas throughout his career, and he's always exploring as an artist, and he's never just staying in one place. And this is just one period of him moving from different realms of art, And the movie is about art, ultimately. That's what's so exciting about it. I didn't feel like it was about Bob Dylan, the person. That seemed almost just after the fact. It was mostly about, what should an artist prioritize? Should they stay faithful to a movement and to other people? Or do they need to prioritize change and the inner whatever muse, what's inspiring them? The movie kind of takes it for granted that Dylan is a genius, that these songs are brilliant. You can go with that as far as you want, but that's the movie is starting on that base level, that he is a genius. He has this brilliant talent, but he is an imperfect vessel, a little gremlin psychopath who is reminded of Flem Snopes from William Faulkner's Snopes trilogy. Just kind of a nothing person who can embody anyone and insinuate himself into any situation. And there's this ruthless ambition that is just boiling under the surface. Very much the anti-Inside Llewyn Davis, which I love Inside Llewyn Davis, but that movie's about a failure in the folk scene, and this is about huge success. Yet there's a similar feeling of emptiness and alienation. What makes his art so brilliant, what makes his music so brilliant, is also what makes him a bad person. And I don't think you have to be a bad person to make great art. That's not what I'm saying. But you can see the seeds of his personality and his music and how those interact with each other. I think the movie is smart to focus on Dylan's music, because that's the best way to understand him. And also, the movie really focuses on this Pete Seeger dynamic and relationship. Pete Seeger, famous folk musician, but he really stands as like the old guard, supports Dylan, but is at odds with Dylan when he starts to change, when he becomes bigger than the folk music and bigger than a political movement. I think that's especially relevant in today's times when, Dylan was so criticized for going electric, for straying from the folk music scene, because he was also abandoning politics in a movement way. He was abandoning being part of a wider movement of collective people, and it was all about the individual. And I think that's almost an omen almost of the decades to come in terms of the period after the 60s, or at least how we remember the 60s and how boomers remember the 60s as like this era of collective movement and change and possibility and hope, etc., etc. These come around throughout the generations time and time again, only to be followed by the greed of the 70s and the 80s. And I feel like there's going to be a similar attitude about the year 2020 for years to come of the generation I'm in. This is a tangent that I won't go down, but the movie is about that change. And I actually, about midway through the film where Dylan sings The Times They Are A-Changin', and I was getting emotional because the movie structurally, thematically, along with the music, was so meshed together, so perfectly in tune, emotionally invested. That being said, I have to mention I was listening to the Big Picture podcast, as I often do, and they were talking about trends of the musical biopics and the cliches, and this movie has some of those. There are some moments that just felt false. There's one whole sequence involving the Cuban Missile Crisis, and how it was paired together with Dylan's music was a bit corny. I get it. Yeah, Masters of War. Just the way it played out chronologically in that sequence. And when you see the film, you'll know what I mean. But I just thought it was kind of cheesy. I'm not going to spoil. I'll get into spoilers in a bit. It is the Dylan story. He changed the culture. He had to move beyond that in order for his art to thrive. It never felt like, I'm doing this for the culture. I have a bone to pick. I have these things. It was just, he has this gift, this brilliance that can't be shackled down. And you see Pete Seeger and these others around him, his girlfriends, Joan Baez, these other characters, see this brilliance that can't be contained, and it's beautiful and tragic. Anyways, I'm sounding like a total Dylan fanboy right now, but to put it simply, I really liked the movie. It did overstay its welcome a little bit at the end, like you kind of get the point of what it's trying to say. I didn't really mind because I thought that it did such a respectful job of telling this story. It was very simple and very straightforward, and I thought that worked. It wasn't trying to be clever. It was almost very like folk music-esque in the way it was simple and straightforward and not trying to change things up. But also, I don't know, reminded me sort of Nashville, weirdly, just how so much of the story and the drama is told during these musical sequences. And it is basically a musical because there's a lot of great moments where we see the drama between him and Joan Baez and all these other characters play out during a song. I would give the movie an 8 out of 10. So spoilers for A Complete Unknown. Spoilers for Bob Dylan's life. I really thought they were going to show the motorcycle accident. Here's the thing about Bob Dylan is there's so many interesting eras of Bob Dylan that I would love to see on screen. I think they should make a sequel to this. I think, in a few years, they've got to do Timothée Chalamet in his divorced era. He got Rolling Thunder Review and then his gospel period. That could all be one movie. That would be incredible. I want to see Paul Schrader directing Tight Connection to My Heart, and just how he looks so awkward in that entire music video. If you guys haven't seen that, watch Tight Connection to My Heart. Joan Baez, the actress who plays Joan Baez, stunning, really amazing. Edward Norton was great as Pete Seeger. I just really felt for him, and I thought he was the perfect foil against Dylan. He's like this fatherly figure and like wanting to, but also needing to use him. There's this scene that is so, oh my God, hard to watch, where he's doing like public access TV when Dylan is like in the stratosphere rising, and basically he wants to keep using Dylan to bring attention to folk music, and Dylan's trying to do his own thing, but he still has this loyalty to Pete Seeger and to Woody Guthrie, and so he shows up late, and Pete Seeger has already brought in another musician as a backup, but he's like awkwardly trying to like get Dylan back into the scene and include him, uncomfortable how it gets to that point. The whole scene where Pete Seeger is, before the Newport festival, before the famous Going Electric scene, where Pete Seeger shows up in Dylan's room, gives him this like long rambling story about the spoons shoveling the sand and everything, and that's just so well done with the performances, the acting, the movement, the directing of how Dylan is just already distracted and he's onto his own thing. Like, how he's going to react. I did like the Johnny Cash of it all. I think that Johnny Cash was almost like this centering presence in Dylan's life. And I think that's probably how it was actually. I don't know what it is. I think Johnny Cash is just cool. I think maybe there was a Johnny Cash, you feel like he knows who he is 100%. Dylan, you feel like he has no clue. And maybe that's why he balanced him out so well in the film. And of course, this movie's following history and what actually happened, but I do like that it was Johnny Cash who gives Dylan the acoustic guitar to go play a couple more songs at the Newport Festival. Yeah, so despite some like cliched moments, I really liked it. I think that Nadia would like it. I really want her to see it just so I can geek out about Bob Dylan. Yeah, what did you guys think of A Complete Unknown? Do you guys like what's your favorite Bob Dylan album? There you go. And I will talk to you all in the future. Hope you're all doing well. Take care of yourselves, and bye-bye.